I stepped off the plane feeling rejuvenated after 2 unforgettable weeks exploring Thailand, the temples, the cuisine, the beaches. It had been the ideal getaway from my high-pressure consulting job and the non-stop neighborhood drama in Pinterest. Estates. All I wanted now was to collapse into my own bed and sleep off the jet lag. But as my Uber pulled into my street, something felt off. A police car was parked in my driveway. My first instinct was that maybe there had been a break-in. But as I walked closer, suitcase rolling behind me, I saw a family standing on my porch. Speaking with the officers, a man, a woman, and 2 kids. They looked completely at ease. The woman was holding a set of keys. My keys. "Excuse me," I said, stepping around the patrol car. "What's going on? This is my house." The officers turned to me with guarded expressions. "Sir, this family called us because they say someone is trying to break into their home. Can you show us some ID?" I fumbled for my passport, completely stunned. There must be a mistake. I've lived here for 6 years. I just got back from vacation. The man standing on my porch looked just as confused. "We bought this house 2 weeks ago. We have all the paperwork, the deed. We moved in yesterday." My stomach sank. That couldn't be right. I never listed my house for sale. But when I looked past them through the window, dread hit me. All my furniture was gone. My photos, my belongings. Everything had disappeared. In their place were unfamiliar couches, tables, and still unpacked boxes. One of the officers, a stern-looking woman who kept her hand near her holster, said firmly, "Sir, I need you to step back. These individuals have legal documentation, proving they own this property." "This is crazy," I said, my voice rising in panic. "I have my mortgage statements, my tax documents, everything's on my phone. I can prove this is my house." But as I scrambled to find the evidence in my email, I could see the doubt in their eyes. The family looked scared. The children hiding behind their mother. I was being treated like a trespasser on my own property, and I had no idea how this nightmare had begun. Everything had been in order when I left. The mortgage on autopay, mail held at the post office, even a landscaping service mowing my lawn while I was gone. The only thing unresolved was the latest ridiculous letter from our HOA president, Karen Wilkinson. Karen had made my life miserable ever since I moved into Pinterest Estates. In her 50s, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a clipboard glued to her hand, she ruled the neighborhood like a drill sergeant. Her most recent grievance was about the color of my mailbox. Apparently, charcoal gray wasn't up to code. It was supposed to be slate gray. I'd planned to deal with it when I got back. Karen was infamous for her absurd rules, sending citations for grass growing a bit too tall or threatening fines because my trash bin stayed out a couple of hours past pickup. She once used a ruler to measure the spacing between my holiday decorations, claiming they weren't evenly aligned. But never in my wildest dreams did I think she could go this far. As I stood there on my own driveway being treated like a criminal, a familiar white SUV rolled up to the curb. Out stepped Karen, impeccably groomed, clipboard in hand and wearing that ever-smug expression. "Officers," she called out, striding. Overconfidently, "Looks like our neighborhood trespasser is back. As I mentioned when this lovely family contacted me earlier, this man no longer lives here. He abandoned the home months ago and the HOA had to step in." My jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" I turned to her furious. "I've been gone for 2 weeks, not months, and you know that." Her eyes narrowed coolly. "The HOA has documentation showing the home was abandoned and dues went unpaid for over 6 months. We followed all proper procedures to place a lien and sell the property to cover the debt. It was an outright lie. I had never missed a payment. Even the officers looked uneasy now, though they still stuck to protocol. They advised me to contact an attorney and pursue the matter through legal channels. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of stress and disbelief. I checked into a hotel and called every attorney in the area until I found someone willing to meet on short notice. Her name was Jessica Ramirez, and as I told her my story, her expression grew more serious by the minute. "This reeks of fraud," she said, tapping her pen on her notepad. "But time is critical. If a deed transfer has been recorded, we'll need to file a challenge fast." With her help, I gathered every piece of proof I could. Bank statements confirming my HOA dues were current, travel records showing I'd only been away for 2 weeks, and emails from neighbors verifying they'd seen me around the property shortly before I left. We also submitted a formal request to the county clerk's office for all documents related to the supposed sale of my home. What we uncovered was staggering. Someone had submitted false claims that the property had been abandoned, alleging I owed over $15,000 in unpaid dues and fines. There were forged letters, supposedly sent to me, along with fake inspection reports and a fabricated notice of public auction. The fraudulent paperwork traced straight back to Karen and the HOA board. Even more disturbing was what we learned when Jessica decided to investigate recent home sales in the neighborhood. 2 other properties had been sold in similar fast-tracked lien processes over the past year, both while the homeowners were out of town. One owner had been deployed with the military. Another was away caring for an ill parent. "This is calculated," I told Jessica, livid. "She's targeting people who can't fight back. This isn't just harassment anymore. It's criminal." The case cracked wide open when we found Karen's link to the real estate agency that had handled these shady sales. Her sister-in-law was the listing broker, and together they had been profiting off the transactions. The smoking gun was an email Jessica obtained via subpoena, in which Karen discussed my absence, noting my paused mail and booked ride to the airport as the perfect opportunity. Armed with this damning evidence, we approached the district attorney's office. Initially, they were hesitant, viewing it as a civil dispute. But once Jessica laid out the pattern of deception and abuse, their stance shifted. "This is a deliberate scheme," Jessica argued. "It's organized real estate fraud involving HOA officials and realtors." Momentum built when we brought the case to a local news outlet, drawing public attention to the corruption. The reporter, clearly thrilled at the prospect of uncovering corruption in the heart of suburban America, wasted no time launching an in-depth investigation into Karen and the HOA. It was the kind of story that practically wrote itself. A seemingly pristine neighborhood hiding a web of deception, manipulation, and greed. As the team dug deeper, the scope of Karen's operation came into chilling focus. She hadn't just abused her authority, she had ruled the HOA like a petty tyrant, running it as though it were her own private racket. The reporter's findings revealed that Karen had systematically bullied other board members into silence, using fear, social pressure, and threats of fines or community disgrace to keep anyone from questioning her. She steered lucrative HOA contracts to friends and family members, often at inflated prices, while pocketing kickbacks under the table. Vendors who refused to play along were mysteriously dropped. The expose aired on a Thursday evening during prime time. It was a bombshell. Hidden cameras, witness interviews, and damning documentation painted a damning picture of corruption and abuse behind the manicured lawns of Pinehurst Estates. By sunrise Friday, my phone was lighting up with messages and calls from neighbors, many of whom I'd barely exchanged more than a wave with before. They were angry, and finally they weren't afraid to speak. One after another, residents shared their own run-ins with Karen, threats over trivial violations, mysterious fines that seemed impossible to dispute, and stories of being publicly shamed in HOA meetings. But the most significant revelation came from an unexpected source, a former HOA treasurer. He came forward with ledgers and financial records showing that Karen had been siphoning funds from the HOA for years. She used the association's accounts as a personal piggy bank, withdrawing thousands for luxury spa visits, shopping sprees, and even a vacation to Italy, all under the guise of community improvement expenses. That was the tipping point. With concrete evidence of embezzlement and a growing mountain of testimony from frightened and now furious residents, the authorities began treating the situation as a serious criminal case. The police secured warrants to search both Karen's home and the HOA's shared office space. What they found was far worse than anyone had imagined. Inside locked filing cabinets, they uncovered detailed dossiers on numerous homeowners. These included financial records, travel itineraries, and even surveillance logs. There was a spreadsheet titled Opportunities, listing homeowners who frequently traveled, had high-value properties, or were dealing with personal hardships, people Karen clearly saw as vulnerable targets. The family who had unknowingly purchased my home was horrified to learn they had been manipulated into a scam. Fortunately, the court acted swiftly, invalidating the fraudulent sale and ordering the HOA's insurance policy to fully reimburse the family for their financial loss and relocation costs. It wasn't their fault. They had been misled like the rest of us. I was finally allowed to return to my home, though the victory was bittersweet. Many of my personal belongings, furniture, keepsakes, even irreplaceable mementos, had been either sold off or discarded during what had been called a clean-out in preparation for the false sale. My house was familiar, but it no longer felt the same. Still, I was back, and justice was finally closing in. Karen's downfall was as public as her reign had been tyrannical. In a moment that quickly went viral, she was arrested in the middle of an HOA meeting she was attempting to conduct as though nothing had changed. Neighbors had gathered to confront her, phones raised and recording. Just as she launched into one of her usual condescending monologues about community standards, 2 officers entered the room and cut her off mid-sentence. "You are under arrest," one of them said as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Her signature smirk vanished. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "This is ridiculous," she screeched as they read her rights. "I was protecting property values. These people should be thanking me." No one thanked her. The charges were staggering. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, conspiracy, grand theft, and money laundering. At a press conference, the prosecutor announced that the case would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. They would be seeking a sentence of up to 25 years in prison, plus over $1 million in fines and restitution. Karen's carefully curated image, her tailored pantsuits, her perfect blonde bob, her air of superiority, finally cracked for good during her arraignment. When the judge denied her bail, citing her wealth, her access to falsified records, and the serious nature of her crimes, she broke down completely. In front of reporters, neighbors, and court observers, Karen collapsed in tears. Mascara streaked down her face as she sobbed, dressed not in pearls and pressed slacks, but in an orange jumpsuit. It was the end of an era in Pinehurst Estates and the beginning of justice.